Good afternoon and welcome to our very first Lunch and Learn of 2025. I am Amanda Lakin, the Director of Communications and Marketing for the Nevada Housing Coalition, and I have just a few announcements before we get started. The first is if you're here for the first time as a Lunch and Learn attendee, welcome. For those of you who have attended in the past, you may have noticed that registration looked a little bit different this time. We launched a new membership and event platform last summer. So moving forward, we will have everyone register for any upcoming lunch and learns on a monthly basis, and you can do this on our website at nvhousingcoalition.org. There will be a button at the top that says events, which will take you to all of our upcoming events. Next month, we are going to be talking about our legislative priorities for the upcoming session. We will be welcoming the Nevada Housing Division to give an update on AB 310. And we will also be hearing from Sean McCoy from the Lead Center of Real Estate at UNLV. He will be sharing some recent work on Nevada's housing market. In March, our Lunch and Learn is going to be hosted by the Nevada Clean Energy Fund. So if either of those topics sound interesting to you, and we hope that they do, please sign up today. One of the new features we're excited about is upon registering for our Lunch and Learn, you are going to have the option to add the event to your calendar. And in the calendar invite, there will be a Zoom link for easy access. And lastly, just a save the date, our 2025 Nevada Housing Conference is going to be hosted this year in Las Vegas at Circa Resort and Casino on October 15th and 16th. So again, put that on your calendar. Please join us because we're going to do another amazing event for everyone this year. Now I will turn it over to Maurice Page, our Executive Director.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today for our first Lunch and Learn of 2025. Yay! Right? So I hope your new year is off to a great start. It's truly exciting to see everyone that has logged in to be a part of our first Lunch and Learn of the year. Your presence speaks volumes about the dedication and the passion that each of you bring to addressing housing challenges that we have in our great state of Nevada. For those of you that are new to the coalition or this may be your first time logging in, we are a statewide organization committed to advancing affordable housing solutions through collaboration, education, and advocacy. Our mission is very clear. It is to create a Nevada where everyone has a safe and stable and affordable place to call home. Um, Again, I want to just be able to sit here and say that without you, our members, we wouldn't be here today to be able to reach out and do the work that we do. And so if you are interested in becoming a member of the coalition, please let us know through the chats. Membership not only connects you with a network of leaders, developers, advocates, policymakers, but it gives you access to resources, trainings, and other opportunities that we do to shape our housing situation here in Nevada. With that being said, I wanted to just say thank you for being here again. Thank you for sharing all of your expertise and for your commitment to making a difference throughout our state. You'll notice that we have our chat. So again, if you have any questions during the presentation, please log them. Please put them in there. We will take note of those and we will address them as they start coming in. With that being said, let's move on. We have BLM, Ron Mobley, here to speak to us about everything BLM. And so let me give you an overview of his bio. Ron serves as the Special Legislation Program Manager for BLM Nevada, where he oversees a vital program that facilitates the disposal of certain federal lands in Nevada. This innovative program utilizes the revenue generated from land disposals to fund projects that benefit the public across Nevada and portions of Arizona and California. Under Ron's leadership, the Special Legislation Program has become a multi-billion-dollar initiative that exemplifies unprecedented collaboration among federal, state, and local partners. This cooperation has led to significant enhancement of landscape, public lands, and recreational facilities in the region. Since 2020, Ron has also played a significant role in the development and implementation of BLM Nevada's affordable housing policy, demonstrating his commitment to addressing Nevada's housing crisis. With a diverse background in ranching, land acquisition, engineering, construction, hard rock mining, and natural gas exploration, Ron brings a wealth of experience to his role at the BLM. His unique perspective allows him to approach land management with a comprehensive understanding of both environmental and economic considerations. Ron graduated from Colorado State University with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and furthered his education by earning a Master of Science in Management Information Systems from the University of Arizona. Known for his commitment to sustainable practices and public engagement, Ron continues to champion responsible land use and conservation, ensuring that America's public lands are preserved and enhanced for future generations. We also have some of other team members from BLM on the call. And so, Ron, I will hand it over to you. Thank you so much for being here, and let's get started.
Thanks, Maurice, and thanks for inviting BLM to give all the members of your organization a presentation on what not only BLM does, but more specifically how our affordable housing program works in Nevada. So with that, I'm going to ask Amanda. She's running the slides for me today. Thank you very much. So you can go to the next slide. So first, I thought I'd just start off with like what does BLM do in general? You often hear us called a multi-use agency, where we're trying to balance the use of the lands for all parts of the public, whether it's people that want to use it for recreation, whether they want to use it for energy development, timber, grazing. That's what we're about, trying to balance that use across the landscape. And when I say landscape across the United States, surface-wise, almost 250 million acres that we're trying to balance that use. Next slide, Amanda. So some of the the ways we do this, to dive just a little bit deeper, is get into land use planning and trying to identify across the landscape what is the best use for this particular piece of land in this particular place. Is it recreation? Is it something for mining? Is it some other activity? Should we be disposing of this? And we do this quite often through a collaborative process with all of our stakeholders. Next slide. So in particular, BLM Nevada, we have under management about 48 million acres, big chunk of the state. And as if you look at that map on the left, all that area colored in yellow, or looks yellow to me anyway, the colored portion, those are lands that BLM administers. We deal with approximately 20 of the federal tribes. We have 6 offices spread across the state, with district offices with 11 field offices. We help generate about $9 billion for the Nevada economy. We have a very large wildland fire and law enforcement program. We have the majority of the wild horse and burro population in the United States, and we do a lot of special use permits. And we also lead the nation in renewable energy and mining in general. So next slide. So a little bit about some of our partners that we deal with. Of course, we're heavily involved with the 17 counties. One of the things we do is, in general, most people that own property get a bill from the county assessor every year, and you pay your property tax. Well, we don't get a bill from the assessor's office. Instead, we provide payment in lieu of taxes, and that was $33 million last year that we provided to the various counties. Under the special legislation program, it is a really big partnership across multiple federal, state, and non-federal folks. And it involves, 5 acts, basically. Have the 4 bigger ones listed there. And then we have a lot of involvement with our military partners across the state also. That's just kind of a little snippet of the partners. There's a lot more, just a few that we deal with right there. So next slide, please, Amanda. All right, from a recreation standpoint, there's 50 million acres out there where people can use for various things. Specifically, it contributes about $500 million to the economy. That number is based on 2023 numbers. The 24 numbers aren't out yet. Some of the bigger events that we have out on our landscape is Burning Man, which that occurs in northern Nevada, has about 80,000 people that show up for 1 week, and it stretches across a couple months from setting up Burning Man to tearing it down. Then we have a lot of off-highway vehicle type races. One of the bigger ones we have is the Mint 400 that goes from Vegas to Reno. Next slide, please. Some of the other lands that people can recreate on are our National Landscape Conservation System lands, and those include national conservation areas like Red Rock in southern Nevada, the Black Rock Desert in northern Nevada. We have 3 national monuments across the state that we administer. And then there's a multitude of other types of conservation system lands that we manage with the wilderness areas, the national scenic and historic trails, and so forth. Next slide. On the resource side, the first slide I talked about, BLM, we talked about wild horse and burro a little bit. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but we're also involved in things like the bi-state and greater sage grouse, and ensuring their habitats viable, the recovery of the Lahontan cutthroat trout, a lot of seed activity for trying to not only gather seeds, but also using those seeds when there's a fire for recovery and other things. We have a lot of grazing activities in various parts of the state, just to name a few things that we do in the resource area. Next slide, Amanda. Nevada's wild horse and burro program, it's the largest in the nation. We currently, at the end of 2024, fiscal year 2024 for the federal government, which ended September 30th of last year, we had about 38,000 wild horse and burro on the landscape. That's down considerably from 2023. In 2025, we plan to do 5 gathers right now, together about 3,000 animals. And we have 4 holding facilities across Nevada where when we do a gather, we bring the animals to those facilities, and they're kept at those facilities for the rest of their life, basically, unless they're adopted out. Next slide. So we'll talk a little bit now about the other side of BLM, where we're dealing with mining and renewable energy. Very, very big mining program. As the slide says, roughly 280,000 active mines. And the size of those mines vary from, super small, maybe 5 acres to really big mines of several hundred, even 1,000+ acres. Nevada BLM lands have the largest gold mine in North America. And last year, all the gold mines in Nevada produced over 4 million ounces, about $8 billion. I guess that number is actually from 2023. The 24 number isn't out. And all those mining claims have reclamation bonds in case something happens and the owner of that mine can't reclaim the land once they leave for whatever reason. We have bonds to be able to reclaim the lands. And right now, that amount of funding starting at 2025 was almost $4 billion. Next slide, please. Another big part of BLM Nevada's mineral program is lithium mines. We have the only active lithium mine in the US. Lithium's super important right now because of electric vehicles and other things related to solar. And then there's a lot of other mines. Palladium is also very important, and we're doing a lot of exploration and work with mining companies in that area. Next slide, please. In the renewable energy area, we are a big leader in that also for BLM in general. Total economic contribution to Nevada from renewable energy we have in place right now is about $1 billion. There's four big areas where our renewable energy program does a lot of work. Solar, wind, geothermal, and then the transmission and storage. There's current applications out there right now for over 9 gigawatts of power, and that's a lot more homes than Nevada has. If when that 9 gigabytes comes online, so we're exporting a lot of that to other places. And between Nevada, California, and Arizona, we're producing a lot of the solar energy or renewable energy needed for the U.S. So, next slide, please. So I want to transition now and start talking about Nevada's special legislation program, because this is where we have the authority for the affordable housing program. And what really makes legislation special, and why do we call it special in Nevada in particular? Because as we all know, Congress doesn't pass that many acts to send to the president for signature, or that many bills to be sent to the president for signature and become acts. In Nevada, we have 5 acts that have been passed that we call special legislation. And they identify about 158,000 acres right now that we can dispose of. And we've disposed of roughly 45,000 of those already. And then the proceeds from those are deposited in the special treasury accounts. And that's where it becomes the special part of legislation, and the fact that normally when BLM disposes of land and generates revenue, it goes back to the treasury, where Congress then decides how those funds will be spent every year. With SNPLMA and the other acts, when we dispose of the land, it goes into 4 separate special treasury accounts. And in each one of those accounts, through the act, Congress identified what those funds could be expended for without further appropriation. So the secretary has those funds available to spend for all kinds of great things in Nevada, parts of California, and parts of Arizona without further appropriation. Just a few technicalities of how languages and acts. So next slide, please.
Ron,
yes.
I'm sorry, excuse me, real quick. If we could just jump in real quick. We have a couple of questions that came
Sure.
in, and I don't want to get too far behind with questions,
Okay.
but we have the first question that came in was with the upcoming land auction on March 18th, would BLM look to designate a portion of the lands exclusively towards affordable housing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more later. The auction that's coming up in March, those lands, none of them are identified for affordable housing, but we do have reservations right now for over 1,000 acres in the Las Vegas Valley alone for affordable housing purposes. And we can talk. I'll talk about that a little bit more in some slides coming up.
Okay, and then the second question that just came in was they would like to know if BLM owns urban infill parcels or if it only owns remote parcels at the outskirts on the outskirts of the cities.
Yeah, that's a great question, and this is a perfect slide to answer that. Because when you look at the map on the right-hand side, the blue and black hash mark, or at least that's what it looks to me like, that is the SNPLMA boundary, and within the Las Vegas Valley. Any lands within that boundary that BLM administers, we have been directed by Congress to dispose of those at some point. And so the lands that we have available for disposal right now are the ones that have kind of that yellowish background with the green hash marks. And so you can see a lot of those lands are infill lands if you were to look at that map at a large scale. And then there's a lot of them lands on the edges also. And that's roughly the 29,000 acres that it talks about. We've also transferred roughly 7,000 acres to other entities, and 5,000 of those acres went to Clark County around the airport, and those lands are all available for disposal. So we have a combination of both things that are very urban, and this is pretty consistent across the state. If you came to Northern Nevada to Reno, it'd be the same thing. We have a lot of of urban lots and things that could be used for infill in addition to lands that are, on the outskirts or further away from town. So hopefully that addresses the question. Anything else before I move on, Maurice?
So yeah, they're starting to come in. So they wanted to know, will this land be available to nonprofits? And do you lease or sell it to military? Churchill County that they're referencing was their recent purchase by Fallon Naval Base.
Wow, that's I think it's kind of a twofold question. Like who will we sell land to? And there's I'll answer that one first. And it can get more complicated. So I suggest whoever asks that question at the end of the slide is my email, and just reach out to me directly so we can, provide more detail. But when we auction land off, the auction is available for purchased by anyone. There's no restrictions, whether it's a nonprofit, a corporation, an individual. The question about Churchill County, in the National Defense Authorization Act of 2023, it directed BLM to do land exchanges for BLM administered lands and Bureau of Reclamation administered lands with private entities. And so that's the exchanges that we're authorized to do, where we fund them with SNPLMA funds. There's also things in the NDAA Act of 2023 where BLM is conveying land to the military, but that's not part of special legislation. And I'm happy to have go into that in more detail and what that all means with whoever asks those questions. But there are much lengthier conversations.
Excellent, thank you. We'll hold off on a few questions. We'll let you dive right back in.
Okay, great. Well, I already explained the map of SNPLMA, but what's SNPLMA all about? It was passed in 1998 to authorize really the development of the Las Vegas Valley, because for Las Vegas to grow, the city, the county, and so forth, the only way for that to happen was for BLM to dispose of land. The disposal boundary had about 69,000 acres. And as I said, we have about 29,000 remaining. It's generated over 4.7 billion in revenue. And SNPLMA directs how those proceeds can be used. Part of those proceeds, 5% goes to the state of Nevada for education, and 10% goes to the Southern Nevada Water Authority to basically create the distribution system to all the land that BLM's disposing of. Through 20 rounds, the Secretary has funded 1,500 projects. Some of those are in the Las Vegas Valley. In reality, a lot of them are. And what the funds can be used for, the types of projects, are parks, trails, and natural area. As you look around the parks in Las Vegas, if you went back to 1998, there weren't a lot of parks. Today, almost 90% of the parks you see out there, SNPLMA has provided some level of funding to them, well over $1 billion since the act was passed. We can also do fuel treatments, capital improvements on federal land, conservation initiatives, and that's kind of the tip of the iceberg and high level what the projects are. Next project, please.
Hey, Ron, if I could hop in, could we
sure.
go as quickly as possible to the affordable housing section, just so that we capitalize?
Absolutely. We are there, Kirsten. So great for keeping me on track. So as you look under the hood a little bit more about how SNPLMA funds can be used, one of the things it says is that BLM can use those funds to protect the lands that are reserved for affordable housing. And it also says we can use those funds to reimburse BLM to do the sales of land. So next slide. Some of the sales we're going to have in the next year, they're listed there. We're going to, between the acts, we're going to hopefully sell about 3,000 acres across the state. And we can skip to the next slide since Future conveyances, everybody always asks me, is SNPLMA going away? Are we going to run out of money? We're going to run out of land. There's a lot more acres to be transferred to entities to sell in the near future. And this is just a highlight of, roughly 17,000 acres that are sitting there to still be conveyed to others for disposal, where the money will come back to the special treasury account. Next slide. All right, affordable housing policy. SNPLMA Section 7B identifies that the Secretary of Interior, in consultation with the Secretary of HUD, can make available lands anywhere in the state of Nevada for affordable housing. And what does that really mean when you start to look under the hood? And if we go to the next slide, affordable housing is defined in Section 104 of the Cranston-Gonzalez Affordable Housing Act. And it says basically for that Section 104 that affordability means anybody whose income is 80% or less of the average median income. So for affordable housing purposes under Section 7B, if somebody comes to us and there's specific entities that we're able to sell the land to, comes to us and says, hey, we would like this parcel for affordable housing, they're committing to using that either as for rent or for sale or transitional housing, where the income of the people that will be have the units is 80% or less of average median income. Next slide, please. And I talked a little bit about this, and somebody had a question about how many acres do we reserve, or how much land does BLM have reserved for affordable housing? So far, all the reservations have been within the SNPLMA boundary, and this slide shows exactly who has those reservations. State of Nevada has roughly, 400, a little over 400 acres, and Clark County has about the same, and then Las Vegas and Henderson have less than 100 acres each. Other cities and counties throughout the state can ask for reservations, and in addition to the 3 housing authorities in the state. Next slide, please. So far, this slide shows the disposals we've had for affordable housing that we've done through the program. We've disposed about 50 acres to bring on roughly 1,000 units. And the discounted rate of the property has been roughly $38 million. And you'll notice in 2024, the discount rate dropped drastically. When we updated our policy, we established a discount rate of $100 per acre for affordable housing. Next slide. So there is a social benefit on both sides when we use the SNPLMA funds that just want to make everybody aware of, and somewhat of a trade-off. If we dispose of 5 acres for affordable housing right now to build approximately 200 units, that would generate $500 that would go into the special account. If we sold those 5 acres, it could generate roughly $5 million, where we would use that for a park trail or natural area that then, people that maybe lived in an affordable housing community or the other residents around that area would use for recreation purposes. So it's a decision that our executive board has to make of how much affordable housing and how much discount can we give, given the program also provides other benefits. And if you go to the next slide, here's a different aspect of the kind of the trade-off, where we're doing a lot of fuels treatments to maybe protect somebody's house from being destroyed if we sell the land for full price, versus building affordable housing for somebody else. So there's a lot of trade-offs when decisions are made about how to use these funds and what for in SNPLMA. And they're both great things to have to make decisions about, because we all need housing, but we also need parks to recreate around that housing, and we need to protect our forests and other things from destruction, and protect people's houses that already exist. So next slide.
Ron, real quickly, there was a quick question that came in that people wanted to know, particularly in Northern Nevada, is Washoe County getting any BLM land for affordable housing that you know of? And then is there a way a person can register to be noticed of any of the sales?
So, so to date, um, Washoe County has, in particular, or Sparks, or Reno, have not requested any reservations for affordable housing. And this is like an opportune time for this question to come up, because this slide talks about kind of the process for acquiring or making reservations for parcels that are inside the disposal boundary and outside, and it's a little bit different process, but they're available. And there are lands in Washoe County that BLM has, but there haven't been any requests so far. Was that a two-part question, or did I answer that one?
It was two different questions, but
Okay.
yeah, I think you got them. Yes.
Okay. Any others, or you want me to keep going?
Keep going.
Okay. So how does the process work from a really high level, from within the disposal boundary, outside the disposal boundary, for determining how to acquire a parcel? Within the SNPLMA boundary, for all the lands that we dispose of, it's through a joint selection process. And that joint selection process basically says that the entity that wants to acquire that land for affordable housing comes to BLM and tells us, hey, we want this parcel reserved for affordable housing. We'll reserve that parcel for them for up to 10 years. And it's not available to be disposed of for any other purpose. If they don't do anything for 10 years, then we will make that parcel potentially available for disposal for other purposes. When we're outside the boundary, somebody can go to the district office, just like they do in Southern Nevada, or even in Southern Nevada outside the disposal boundary, and said, hey, we would like to acquire this parcel. And at that point, we say, okay, we have to look at what parcel you want, and it has to follow FLPNA and our land use plan. And has it been identified for disposal in our land use plan? If it has, then it moves to the next step of the nomination criteria and so forth. If it hasn't been identified, we're going to have to do a land use plan amendment in order to reserve that land from any other use. And it's at the discretion of the district and the field office when they do a land use amendment. The next step in the nomination process is to submit a nomination package to the district, identifying what you're going to use the land for, how many units you're going to use it for, and by when I say identify what you're going to use it for, our guidance states that when you come to us and want to purchase a parcel, you can request that 80% of the living units are going to be affordable, and the other 20% can either be at fair market value units, or they can be commercial units. And the reason we have that in our guidance is to try to make these affordable housing parcels financially viable, because we all know it's a challenge for the economics of them to work out. The actual sales method, the preferred sales method, is a direct sale. And that's how we've done them all, although we have other methods allowed under BLM to dispose of the parcels. And with that, we can go to the next slide. So what's the process with HUD? Because as I mentioned before, these disposals of parcels for affordable housing involve the Secretary of Interior and the Secretary of HUD. And so what happens is a nomination package comes to BLM, and we send that nomination package to HUD to confirm that the entity that's requesting it, the city of Henderson, the city of North Las Vegas, Clark County, Washoe County, so forth, that they actually have the capacity to continue operating under HUD's Community Plan and Development Program. HUD has 90 days to review the package and tell us, hey, we think this is a viable project and that the entity is capable of taking this on. The package comes back to us and we move forward processing the package and disposing of the parcel to the entity. Our goal right now is once we have a completed nomination package within the SNPLMA disposal boundary to issue a patent basically 365 days later. Outside of the disposal boundary, that process is going to take longer because we have to go through a lot more steps. Next slide. So a little bit more, about the details that I just went over. You come in first and you ask for that reservation. It's good for 10 years. Then you do the nomination or request to purchase. BLM receives that, and we go through a whole series of steps. The first one is with cadastral to make sure that that parcel from a legal standpoint, from a survey, we have boundary certainty. We have to look at other things, grazing, mining, and so forth, environmental concerns, and then the realty action, eventually appraisal. Then we issue a notice of realty action that will be published in the Federal Register, and the patent. It's real high level steps in the process. Next slide, please. The appraisal process for affordable housing happens at the same time as a lot of these other steps are going on. And we technically don't need an appraisal to sell the parcel because we've already established that we're going to sell the parcel for $100 an acre. The reason that we do an appraisal is everybody wants to know how much has the federal government contributed to the affordable housing need in Nevada. And so this appraisal that we do provides that information. And so we start off with this request to the Appraisal and Valuation Office, and it goes through many steps over about 160 days and finally comes out with what the fair market value of the parcel is. And like I said, it runs concurrent with the process to issue the NORA in the Federal Register. Next slide, please. So currently we have 2 nominations for affordable housing in the queue. We have one from the city of Henderson and one from the city of Las Vegas. When both of those are, the patents are issued and those units come online, we're going to add roughly 600 plus more units in Southern Nevada to the market. Next slide, please. We believe in 2025 that we're going to have 2 more nominations, one from Clark County and one from the city of Las Vegas. I don't have any more details per se about how many acres or how many units, but we have been told by both entities that they're working on their nomination packages, and we can expect them hopefully before the end of this calendar year, if not sooner. Next slide. That's just my information. The first one is SNPLMA, where there's a lot of details about the program. And the second one's my email in case you want to reach out with specific questions for me. And with that, Maurice, I'll turn it back over to you, see if we have more questions.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Ronald, for providing this presentation to us. I think this is very informative to be able to get out and learn more about what BLM is doing and how their affordable housing policies are affecting our individuals, our folks throughout the state. A couple of questions that did come in was number one, the slides. We did say that the slides will be sent out. Do we have your okay for that, or just wanted to confirm?
Yeah, you're good to send the slides out.
Okay. And then the next question was, is the lands bill the way they are applying for parcels, or what's the difference between the bill and asking for parcels?
Well, so the act, and we'll just use SNPLMA itself. I'm going to have to make a little bit of an assumption that they're asking what's the difference between like an affordable housing reservation and the disposal of a normal parcel that's auctioned off. In the SNPLMA boundary, they're all the parcels that are identified for disposal go through a joint selection process. And the entity that has jurisdiction over the land, they can nominate parcels for disposal or for affordable housing, either one. Any entity can nominate a parcel in the disposal boundary for affordable housing. And so that's the difference. Only the entities that has jurisdiction over that land, so, say like all the parcels we have in Henderson, if that are available for disposal, if Henderson wants us to sell one of those, they come to us and they'll say, hey, we would like parcel X sold. And then we'll determine if there's a reason we shouldn't auction it. For affordable housing purposes, with the lands that are within the jurisdiction of Henderson, Henderson can come and say, we'd like this parcel to be reserved for affordable housing and put in a nomination. But Clark County can also come to us and request that land be used for affordable housing. So I hope that is a clear distinction.
Yes, definitely. We did get a couple more questions. There was probably a few folks that arrived a little late. So if you could just go back through um, just to speak a little bit about nonprofits. There's questions regarding, are there any plans to provide nonprofits first look at available land? And would BLM offer the land being auctioned to nonprofits first? So I know you addressed this a little bit earlier, but there was a few folks that I believe arrived late to the webinar. So if we could just
Yes.
review that, and then we have a couple more.
Okay, so the selling a parcel to a nonprofit, depending on what they want to use it for, there are a couple options for that. And so it's a pretty complicated answer and a longer answer. There is an option potentially for the nonprofit to work with the city who has jurisdiction, because for an auction, we can't accept a request from a nonprofit to sell land. The request has to come through the city, one of the cities or the county, to actually do a disposal for auction. On the affordable housing side, a nonprofit, again, would have to work with the city or one of the affordable housing authorities to come to us to acquire it, and it would be in a double closing type situation at the way the act is written. There is a third option where they could come and request that under the Recreation and Public Purpose Act, that the land be that they acquire the land under the Recreation and Public Purpose Act. So, like I said, it's pretty complicated depending on what they want to do. I hope that helps a little bit.
It does. Thank you. Okay, a couple more questions that has come in. Does the value of the property count towards the non-federal match? And is that what the appraisal can help with?
The value of the land, there's not a match per se. If on our side from the disposal part, when you get into matches and other things about trying to work everything out, I'm don't, I'd have to talk to them. We don't get into that. All we're concerned about is, we have a 5-acre parcel. What's the fair market value? So we can say from a program standpoint, I had that slide that showed, we've sold 6 parcels for roughly 40 million. We was the appraised value, but we sold them for about $1 million. That's what we want to keep track of, because that's what Congress cares about when they ask us questions, or the governor asks us questions, that type of thing. As far as it being a match for some other purpose, I don't know whether that could happen or not. That may be a question we'd have to talk to HUD or whoever they want to use the match for.
Excellent. And then next question, for the sales with auctions, primarily non-housing, is the land sold at an online auction or a courthouse auction or some other way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Are the lands that are auctioned off are used, for housing, commercial, whatever the entity that has jurisdiction over it, whatever they've identified the land use in that area for. Can you repeat the question just so I make sure I answer the other part correctly?
Yes, for the sales with auctions,
Oh, okay.
primarily non-housing, is the land sold at an online, courthouse, or some other way?
Yeah, so all of our auctions currently we do online through the EnergyNet portal, and the one in March, EnergyNet is handling that auction for us online.
All right. And then so we have a ton of questions coming in. So
Okay.
so the next one is, are the affordable housing requirements permanent, 80% AMI in perpetuity? And if so, how does that work for home ownership, a la land trust?
Yeah, the law states that um, the definition in Cranston Gonzalez right now is what we have to go by, definition 104, which says 80% AMI. And so unless Congress were to change the act and change that AMI number, that's what we'll use going forward.
Right. Next question is, what kind of deed restrictions remain on the property once it is transferred to an entity developing housing?
Um, okay, deed restriction. And I need to go back to the last question because it was two-part and they were asking about the land trust part.
Yeah.
And so
So, okay. So the previous question was, are the affordable housing requirements permanent, 80% AMI in perpetuity? And then it said, if so, how does that work for home ownership, a land trust?
it's still okay. So the land trust, we just did our first one with where we conveyed property to Clark County for a land trust where they're building roughly 200 houses. We sold the land to Clark County. Clark County has the land trust, and the covenants that they put in there dictate how that works. We don't dictate that. We just sold it to Clark County. And what we do, which feeds into the deed restrictions, when we updated the guidance, what we say in our guidance is we're selling this land, and the entity that acquires it has 5 years from the time the patent's issued until they have a certificate of occupancy for all the units. If they don't meet that, then the Secretary of Interior can take the property back. We don't have a deed restriction in our policies or in our patents anymore that say this unit, these 50 acres or whatever will be used for affordable housing for the next 20, 30, 40 years. When we developed the criteria for affordable housing, what we were told is, and it's a fact, not just told, but if we have a deed restriction in there, it says this property will be used for the next 40 years for affordable housing. And if not, it reverts back to the Department of Interior. That deed restriction reduces the number of people that will provide funding for the project because it puts the Department of Interior in first position on every single deed. And then the lender is in second position, and no lender wants to be in second position. So we changed that to make the projects more viable and have more lenders potentially that are willing to lend. And then the deed restriction comes in when the county or the city actually issues the patent to whatever developer they're using. That's where the deed restriction can come in, or the deed restriction comes in through the loans from HUD or tax credits and things like that, and which oftentimes have a 20 or 30-year restriction on how long the property has to be used for affordable housing. Hope that helps a little.
Excellent. And then looks like this will be our last question. Do you know the average time frame for how long it takes from nomination to transfer of the title for the affordable housing transactions?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, with the within the disposal boundary for SNPLMA, our goal is from the time we have a completed nomination, not necessarily when it's once submitted, and I'll give you an example in just a second. From the time we have a completed nomination until we issue a patent, we want to do it in 365 days. So we're just talking about the parcel we did with Clark County for the land trust. When that came in, I think it was May of 2023, it wasn't a completed nomination. By November, we had a completed nomination and we issued the patent in October of 2024. So a little less than a year from the time we had a completed nomination. That's how long it takes. And our goal is to try to continue to do that within the SNPLMA disposal boundary. When we're outside the disposal boundary, there's a lot of other factors we have to take into account, and it's going to be case by case how long it takes.
Excellent. All right, Ron, thank you.
And thanks for letting me present. Thanks. We appreciate it. If there's any other questions people have, they'll have my email and with the slides, and just please folks reach out and I can address your questions more specifically. Thank you so much for giving BLM an opportunity to present.
Absolutely. Amanda, do you want to just go through just a couple of quick announcements? Again, you just want to comment, as you stated earlier, if they would like to become a member, how they can make that happen, as well as reinforcing our February Lunch and Learn and the conference dates.
Yes. So on our website, ndhousingcoalition.org, we do have a button to join and become a member. We have a variety of membership levels available. You could always reach out to me directly as well, and I can help you with that. February and March Lunch and Learns are already up for registration, so please register if you're interested. February, we'll be talking about legislative priorities, AB 310, and some housing data. And March, we'll be talking about the Nevada Clean Energy Fund, and save the date, October 15th and 16th this year for our 2025 Nevada Housing
Conference. And then also Affordable Housing Day at the legislation up in Carson is April 22nd. So more information to come on that as well as to how you can participate. As we wrap up, I just want to say thank you again for everyone that tuned in and participated today. Thank you for all your great questions. Definitely looking forward to networking and building with you throughout the year. And I wish you a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone. Be blessed, and I'll see you next time around. Bye-bye.